Hi everyone, Bill Düvendak here, and I want to take a few moments to talk about the upcoming tarot deck and book set, Oraculum Leviathan by myself and Asenath Mason, published through Become a Living God. It is going to be released at midnight on October 29th, so it does not get much more in the heart of the season of the dead in the Northern Hemisphere than that. I'm sure everybody has seen all of the promo material that's already out there, but in this short video, I want to talk about some of the differences and the details that some of you that are familiar with tarot decks might be wondering. So let's just jump in, shall we? So one of the questions that comes up, and I'm a professional tarot reader who has a lot of decks myself. Why another tarot deck? Not only why would someone want to get another tarot deck, but also why would we want to do one? Now, when people are starting to read tarot cards, the first thing they do is they get a deck. Then all of a sudden, once they get familiar with that deck, they see another deck and they think, ooh, bright, shiny squirrel. I'm going to get that one too. So they get it. And then sometime later, they find another deck that speaks to them and wash, rinse, and repeat through the same cycle. And pretty soon, your average person has accumulated multiple tarot decks. This is quite natural. Let's start off with that. Almost everybody I know has gone through this at some point, and I am not immune to it as well. I have over a dozen different decks or so for various reasons. But because of that, oftentimes people hit a point where they start to get more discriminating about the tarot decks that they pick up. So why this one? What sets this one apart? Let's start off with the obvious facts that are right in front of your face in the images on your screen. This is the first most comprehensive tarot deck specifically aimed at those that walk the left-hand path. So as you can see from the Magician, the Fool, and the High Priestess, we're talking left-hand path images. You can tell this by the sulfuric cross at the top of the Magician card. You can also see in the Fool card, the Fool getting ready to enter the Cave of Lilith. And then, of course, with the High Priestess, not only do you have the feminine divinity represented in the cards, you can also see the Tree of Qliphoth behind her. So this deck specifically uses artwork and subject matter that is in line with the left-hand path. You won't get much outside of the left-hand path in this deck, yet it still lines up with traditional tarot and teachings. So for those of you that walk the left-hand path and you've been wanting a deck specifically for your spiritual paradigm, this would be the one, and hence a good reason to pick it up. Now, if that's not enough, and I know that everybody listening to this probably wants more information, let's go on to another reason. In addition to being focused on the left-hand path, this tarot deck also heavily emphasizes the Draconian tradition, as is evidenced by the 3 cards on your screen. So in addition to left-hand path themes, you will find the beings that are from the Draconian tradition and concepts that align with the Draconian edition as well. Now, to be fair, there are decks out there with darker imagery, and in the last maybe 2 or 3 years, more decks have come out with a left-hand path leaning. However, no deck has focused on the Draconian tradition. This is the first one to do it. And as you can see from the artwork, it is heavily laced throughout the cards. Yet we keep the titles of the cards the same, so that those of you that are familiar with traditional tarot will also find comfort here. So this is the first Draconian tradition specific tarot deck out there. And for those of you that work with the Draconian tradition, you can see how energizing the cards are. If you work with the left-hand path but not the Draconian tradition, then this deck can also serve as an enticement to explore that particular facet of the black diamond of the left-hand path. Now, one question that I have had come up quite a bit, and I have answered it, but I want to put it in here, is Crowley or not to Crowley? That is the question. Of all the people I meet that work with left-hand path teachings, the majority of them use the Aleister Crowley Thoth deck. And I know they do it for the visuals, and I know they do it because in his own right, Crowley was a genius. So I completely understand, and quite bluntly, other than Oraculum Leviathan, the Thoth deck is my favorite deck that's out there. If you really want to truly align yourself in a pure way with the left-hand path, Crowley's deck has limits. Remember that it is coming from his perspective that is heavily influenced by the system of Thelema. Now, I know that many people on the left-hand path do not work with Thelema, so that puts them in a quandary as to what tarot deck to use or how they should proceed. Now, the cards that I have in front of you actually portray quite an interesting story when it comes to how much the deck is aligned with not only Crowley, but also the Thoth deck. First, I want to draw your attention to the two images to the left, the Lust card and the Strength card. Right off the bat, you can see that in the traditional Rider-Waite, it is numbered A2, 8, or Major Arcana card number 8, and you can see that in the Oraculum Leviathan deck, it is 11. In that way, we kept it true to what Crowley had to say. So for those of you that are familiar and comfortable with the changes he made in numbering the cards with Lust and Adjustment, you're going to find that that same theme is carried forth here. However, the two cards on the right, the Emperor and the Star, do require a little bit of explanation because this is one way that we deviated from Crowley's Thoth deck. In Liber Alvel Legis, the Book of the Law, Crowley receives the channeled message that Zadi is not the star. And that sends him on an in-depth Kabbalistic exploration as to why. And in the Thoth deck, Zadi is the Emperor, and the letter for the star is the letter from the Emperor, which is He. As you can see from the cards in front of you, we left Zadi with the star and He with the Emperor. The reason for that is that the switch that Crowley made with the Hebrew letter applications to those cards came about from a channeled source, and that channeled source is the fundamental book of Thelema. Considering that not all left-hand path practitioners work with Thelema, Asenath and myself thought it best to leave the Hebrew letters the same as they are in the traditional tarot. So briefly, what we did was we took some things from Crowley's Thoth deck and we left others out. For example, as you can see, we did stick with the word lust instead of strength, and lust more aligns with the left-hand path concepts rather than strength. This is also true of the adjustment card. We left it called adjustment. So you'll see in that way that this tarot deck is a slight variation or a deviance from the Thoth deck, but we did our best to keep it true to the left-hand path first and foremost. In the accompanying book, Oraculum Leviathan, we go into great detail about not only the cards, but also the little subtleties and nuances like this. So you will have the book as a reference point for your studies. Now, when I talk about book here, I'm not talking about the small white staple-bound book that comes with most tarot decks. No, 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 no. I am talking about a classy hardcover book